a little bit differently in reflection of the difficult week and months it's been, and the ruling that came down today, granting a very small measure of accountability for the police violence that has been targeted towards Black people and other people of color throughout really our nation's history. We're going to join the city of Seattle is holding a joint moment of silence at 7 p.m. To reflect on the life of George Floyd, the life of Charleena Lyles, of Tommy Lee, of others who have been killed by police here in Seattle and King County and across the country. So we will start with that, and then we will move forward with the rest of our agenda. So thank you all so much for being here with us, and we will start our moment of silence. Thanks so much. All right, thanks everybody. That was just a minute. It felt like a long time to me. 9 times that was what it took to kill George Floyd. So we have a long ways to go. This organization has made calls to defund the Seattle Police Department by 50% or more. We need to make progress on that. We have a long ways to go. I expect that we all will be hearing from whoever the next mayor of Seattle is going to be. They're joining us tonight. We have a bunch of mayoral candidates in the room already. Others will be joining us, and let's listen to hear what they're going to do to make sure that this stops. Okay. With that, we will move into the rest of our agenda for tonight. Camille Gix is going to start us off with our land acknowledgement tonight.
We would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish, a people that are still here, continuing to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. As an organization and as individuals, we must recognize that this acknowledgement is only a first step, and that we must follow up with actions to disrupt the ongoing racism, disparities, and political invisibility experienced by the Duwamish people.
Yeah, thanks so much, Camille. Okay, moving through our agenda, we're going to move our meeting norms and Robert's Rules explanation to closer to the business because we have a bunch of guest speakers tonight, and I want to move right into them. So you all have the agenda shared with you. Are there any modifications to the agenda? Please raise your hand or message me if you do have any. All right, seeing none, we've got an agenda adopted. Any corrections to our March meeting minutes? Didn't hear any before. Okay, so with that, we will dive right in. Really glad and honored to have one of our two congressional representatives here with us tonight, Congressmember Adam Smith from the 9th Congressional District. Thanks so much for joining us. And you want to give an update and then take a couple questions from folks.
Sure. Thank you very much. I know you have a packed agenda tonight, so I'll try to keep it brief. And certainly at the top of our mind is what you talked about. The Biden administration has made it clear that they have 4 top priorities that they're focused on, and one of them is equity and social justice. And there is so much work to be done in that regard. And while the verdict today is certainly a step in the right direction, as you have said quite eloquently, it is nowhere near enough to deal with the systemic racism and the issues and challenges that we face as a country. And I hope that we do more than just reduce the police budget, that we change the way law enforcement is trained, that we change the way we respond to various. So much of what the police is called out for, they shouldn't be called out for in the first place. There are mental health issues, there are social issues, there are issues that do not require law enforcement, and it simply leads to altercations. And the way the police are trained is to, quote, dominate those encounters, which only leads to an escalation and leads to the endless series of tragedies that we have seen. So there is a ton of work to do all across this country. I support the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act on the federal side, but that is but one of many, many steps that need to be taken. So applaud that effort. On the other issues, which is basically getting the economy going again, getting COVID under control, and dealing with climate change, we are making progress. We passed the COVID relief package, which is an excellent start. It was a large and robust package. We are getting vaccinations out. We need to get them out as quickly as possible. And next big step is the infrastructure package. And I want to urge you to, as strongly as possible, support the biggest, most robust infrastructure package that we can come up with, and to have it focus on addressing that last issue, climate change. We have a real opportunity to remake our infrastructure around a green energy future. Think of this as sort of a mini Green New Deal, the first step in that direction. That's the opportunity that we have, and we really want to get that done. But overall, I just want to end on a positive note, and that is, it is so much better having Joe Biden as president. The damage that Trump did over the course of 4 years, of course, culminating in the travesty that was the January 6th insurrection. I think it's going to take a lot of years for people to fully understand how bad all of that was. And just not having that, having a president who cares to address public health crisis, who acknowledges the existence of systemic racism and wants to try to address it, I mean, it's a huge step in the right direction. Ton more work to be done, to be sure, but that puts us in a position to really make a difference. And I'm excited for this year and for this whole session. I think progressives have a real opportunity to make huge advancements on the issues that I've mentioned, as well as gun safety, as well as comprehensive immigration reform and healthcare reform. A lot of issues that are there for us to make a big difference on. We're off to a good start. More work to be done. I look forward to working with all of you on that, and happy to answer questions to the extent you have time.
Yeah, great. We have about 10 minutes. So if folks have a question for Congressman Smith, please raise your hand. Love to hear from you. And I will start us off since I don't see any right now. I'm sure folks are getting to it. The announcement by the Biden administration that we're pulling out of Afghanistan by September of this year, that I think is welcome news to many of us here. And as you're the chair of the Armed Services Committee, any thoughts on that and what the next steps are there?
Yeah, it's long overdue, and it's the absolute right step. And I think, we have relied excessively on our military to solve our global problems. And I think we should have learned at this point the limitations and the danger of doing that. And President Biden acknowledging that and pulling us out of Afghanistan. Now, I mean, you can't do it by May 1st because you got to do it responsibly. We've got some 10,000 troops there if you count US and NATO. 4 months is a very reasonable time frame. And look, Afghanistan is going to be a tough place for a long time. But our military wasn't going to fix that. And it was costing between $14 and $20 billion a year to maintain that presence. So right off the top, for fiscal year 22, we're saving $15 to $20 billion. We're also going to be saving American lives in bringing our troops home. So I think it is It's good that we're coming home from Afghanistan. It's better that it reflects Joe Biden's understanding of how we need to fundamentally change our approach to foreign policy. Hopefully, this is the first of many steps that shift us towards an approach of alliances and diplomacy and meeting our needs through something other than the use of the U.S. military. So I've been advocating this. When Donald Trump said that we should pull out of Afghanistan, I think it's about one of the only things that Donald Trump ever said that I was pleased to say that I agreed with. So I'm glad that Joe Biden has taken the final step.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for that. All right, Lars, you have your hand up. We'll ask you to unmute.
Thank you. I'm a merchant mariner, and I just wanted to say thank you for your support of the U.S. Merchant Marine. And if there's ever opportunity to support U.S. flagships, I appreciate it as a merchant marine, and I know the people that I work with do, and didn't know if you saw any future opportunities to help support U.S. ships and U.S. mariners.
Absolutely. I had dinner earlier this week or last week with Mark Kelly, Senator, who is a graduate of the Merchant Marine Academy. And he's going to be going up there in a few months to address the Academy and bringing along some administration people. And it's an under-recognized portion of our national security and the strength of our nation is the Merchant Marine fleet. If we're going to deal with, we got to get people and supplies wherever they're going. And that Merchant Marine fleet and the ready reserve fleet that we have to support our country in times of emergency, absolutely crucial. So huge fan of the Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point. Appreciate your service. And on the Armed Services Committee, we do a lot of work to support them in a variety of different ways. So happy to do that, and appreciate you bringing up that important subject.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Rich. Rich, you should be unmuted.
Okay, sorry. Are you familiar with the Thrive Act? It's supported by the Sierra Club, Move On, and about 13 other organizations, which is an even more ambitious infrastructure plan where it's spending $1 trillion a year for 10 years.
I am not actually familiar with it, but now I am. So I'll have my staff take a look at it. And I certainly think a robust investment is warranted, particularly one with an environmental focus. I'll also point out that on the infrastructure package, the infrastructure is important. That the proposed wealth tax that is part of it, also incredibly important. So I think that's a way to pay for it. And, if you do the wealth tax right, it can raise trillions of dollars over that time period. So I'll take a look at the Thrive Act, but I'm excited about
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rich. Paul.
A quick question. When are we going to get out of Guantanamo?
Yes, I have pushed that issue for the better part of a decade. We are now down to 40 detainees there. And there is no reason that we can't close the place and house those detainees in the U.S. while we determine what the ultimate decision is to be. And I will continue to advocate for that. I have spoken to Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, as well as Secretary Austin about this. It's not at the top of their agenda. The items that I mentioned earlier are at the top of their agenda, but they share the same goal, and we want to get it done. So like I said, I've been trying for a while. The Republicans have been scaring people about what it's like to house terrorists in the U.S. as if we don't already do that. It's unbelievably expensive. And also, it was set up basically as a way to duck the Constitution by the George W. Bush administration. So in that, it is an embarrassment to our country and an international embarrassment that we thought that we could duck our own Constitution and not treat people the way they're supposed to be treated. The Supreme Court has said you can't do that, even if they're at Guantanamo. Habeas corpus and everything else applies. So there is no need to have Guantanamo Bay open, and I'm going to continue to work to shut it down.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I see 3 more hands up, and I got 1 in chat, and so we'll get through those. And yeah, really appreciate folks. Kelsey.
Hi, Hi, I was just curious because I'd heard out in community around the discussion about removing our Afghanistan forces, that there might be a plan to replace them with private forces, essentially. And I just wanted to hear from you whether that was legitimate or not.
No, that's not going to happen. In fact, right now, I mentioned there's 10,000 troops. There's also roughly 15,000 contractors. And I actually led a brief to the whole House today where we had Secretary Austin, Secretary Tony Blinken, as well as the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines. And they made it clear that the 15,000 contractors are coming out as well. So the by September 11th date is all 3,000 US troops, 7,000 NATO, and all 15,000 contractors. No, we are out, and we will not. Now, we can't control what Russia or China or Pakistan or other countries might do, but the US will not be paying for contractors, for private security in Afghanistan either.
Thanks. Jeff.
Yeah, hey, Representative Smith, I've been reading about a proposal here recently to develop a new ICBM, which is going to be $260 billion over the life of its program. And I'd like to hear whether you support that program and also how you would compare that as a priority, considering that we have all these other issues like addressing climate change, which will also be a significant expenditure for us.
Yeah, the missile is the GBSD, the ground-based strategic deterrent, and it's meant to replace the existing ICBMs that we have as our ground-based force. And the big problem here is this is contained as part of the plan in the nuclear posture review that was first put out by the Obama administration and then supported by the Trump administration. I have never supported the nuclear posture review. I believe that we need a nuclear deterrent. I do not believe that we need 4,000 or 5,000 nuclear missiles to have that deterrent. I don't even believe that we need the triad, have both ground-based, submarine, and air-based nuclear weapons to get there. We need to pare back that nuclear posture review, in my view. And step one is doing that. Where the GBSD fits in that, I haven't 100% decided. I'm putting pressure on the Biden administration right now to change our national defense strategy and to change the nuclear posture review to better reflect what we need and save money. So we will see. That program is at its very start, and the projection is over an extended period of time. But I am concerned about it, and I want to build a better, cheaper, safer nuclear deterrent than the one we are currently planning.
Thanks. Linda.
Thank you, Congressman. It's nice to see you.
It's great to see you. It's always nice to see people who remember me back before I worked with you before I was even a state senator, much less a United States congressman. So it's great to see you, Linda.
Thank you. So my question has to do with, it's been over 12 years, I believe, that we've been trying to do comprehensive immigration reform. Yeah. And it's constantly not only an irritant, but a source of cruelty to families and individuals, especially to children. What are the prospects that we're actually going to be able to make significant progress on that issue?
Look, I'm going to be well, let me just say, first of all, that I completely agree. It desperately needs to be done. Okay. Essentially, we've had a policy in this country for decades of relying on undocumented labor. And that undocumented labor, those are people, okay, families. They are part of our community. They go to school with our kids. They play sports with our kids. They pay taxes. They are part of our community. And we welcomed them here because we needed them economically. It is completely unfair and wrong to force them to live in the shadows and to be victimized, whether it's by employers not following, fair labor standards because they hold the threat of deportation over them, being unwilling to report crimes or domestic abuse, because it is wrong. And we need a pathway to citizenship for those people. And that's what comprehensive immigration reform would do. Now, the less optimistic part is, what are the odds of getting it done? The Republicans have made a living off of demagoguing immigration reform. And I think the Biden administration is stepping up and trying to deal with a difficult problem. Because, look, how to put this exactly? We don't support open borders. Joe Biden doesn't support open borders, and that's what the Republicans always accuse us And that's their way of blocking immigration reform. And what we've been doing for decades now is spending more money on enforcement. Well, we have spent so much money on enforcement. We don't need to spend any more than we've already spent. We need to focus on a pathway to citizenship and a legal immigration system that works. Can we convince enough people to do that? Can we bust the filibuster on it? You know, those are going to be tough steps. But once we get through infrastructure, immigration is going to be the next big thing that we want to get done. Well, immigration and healthcare reform, I would say. But we did a lot of healthcare reform in the COVID relief package, shoring up Medicaid, shoring up the ACA. And I don't think we'll get immigration reform done in a bipartisan way. We've got to figure out some way to convince the 50 Democratic senators to get rid of the filibuster and do it by a simple majority. That's going to be the push. I also hope that if we can't immediately get comprehensive immigration reform, that at a minimum, we can take some straightforward steps like DACA to protect the children who came here, not their choice, and give them the legal status that President Obama promised them and that Donald Trump took away. So I'm for, if we can go big, that's great. But while we're waiting to go big, let's help how many ever people we can help. And I'm working on a number of different issues on that, trying to get that forward. But it's going to take, and I would urge all of you again on this issue, to put pressure on the Senate. The filibuster should not exist. It just shouldn't exist. Okay, there's no argument for it. And I'm sorry, I've gone on a while here, but I want to make one final argument that I hope you will consider. The Republicans don't support the filibuster either. They just use it to block legislation they don't like. When they were in power, if they wanted something, they got rid of the filibuster. They only want two things: tax cuts and judges. All right. So they passed the tax cuts through reconciliation and they got rid of the filibuster for judges. And then say, well, we don't want to get rid of the filibuster. They don't want to do anything else. They use the power that they had to force through their agenda. We should use the power that we have. If you got the votes, vote. Use those votes. So I hope that we will understand that, some allegiance to, what's the phrase, norms. And this isn't a norm. This is something that's been used by the Republicans to advance their agenda. We need to be more aggressive in using the political tools we have available to us to accomplish the right agenda, the progressive agenda. And I hope we will do that.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. That was our last question, was about the filibuster. I think you covered that really well. Our district, I know many others across Washington, really support using those votes and getting that policy passed that our communities need. So thank you so much for joining us. I know it's late over there. Really appreciate it. All right. Moving down our agenda. So up next, we have a bunch of candidates who are joining us. I'm changing up my view here. Okay, so so each of our candidates that's joining us is going to have 2 minutes to speak to us, to introduce themselves. Many of those candidates we know, but they will speak about their campaigns, their plans, and I'm excited to hear from them. So starting us off, and to the candidates, our meeting host, Morgan McMurray, is going to share a 2-minute timer as her screen so that you know how much time we've got. So to kick us off, we have King County Executive Dow Constantine. I'm looking for Dow here.
I'm here.
Hello.
Hi.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. Could you repeat how much time I have?
2 minutes.
Okay, well, I'll go quick. I was kind of thinking I was going to be here more as the executive. I just want first to start by talking about what's on all of our minds, the trial of Derek Chauvin. I know we all breathed a sigh of relief when he was found guilty, but we should have no delusions that the results of the trial mean the criminal legal system has somehow found its footing and has been fixed. Rather, this is one memorable step on a long path to rid not just the legal system, but every institution in America of the poison of racism. And we are taking broad steps at the county, declaring racism a public health crisis, devoting $5 million to community organizations tracking hate crimes, divesting marijuana tax from the sheriff's office to repair damage done by the war on drugs, and introducing massive new community-based diversion and alternatives to prosecution. I'm pleased that we've been able to reduce youth detention from nearly 90 youth at the time I was sworn in to as few as 12 in recent weeks. That is stunning progress, and there is more to be made. This is definitely an inflection point, and this is the point where America may turn from centuries of oppression for many to the path of equal protection and opportunity for all. We have to do the hard work to make sure that happens. While we confront the virus of racism, we're also confronting the global pandemic. New York Times recently reported that if the rest of the country had done what we did here in King County, some 300,000 Americans would be alive today, Americans who perished in the virus. We now are getting vaccines into the arms of people across the county, 55.5% vaccinated now, more than a third fully vaccinated. Much more our environmental agenda, getting folks in from homelessness to hotels we're buying across the county. I'm so pleased to be invited tonight. I want to thank you for the work you're doing to advance democratic ideals, and thank your Democratic legislators for their support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dow. Really appreciate it. All right, up next we have Port Commissioner Stephanie Bowman. If candidates could raise your hand when I call your name, it will help us to find you. We have a long list.
Go. Can you see me?
Just a sec. Let me spotlight
Okay.
you. All right, there you are.
Oh, perfect. All right. Good evening. Well, thank you so much for letting me join you tonight. I know you have a full agenda, but I also want to first acknowledge the justice provided today to the memory and the family of George Floyd. Let this be a turning point that no officer is above the law. I'm excited to be running for the Port Commission again, because for me, the mission of the Port is to provide economic opportunity for all in our community. Let me tell you a few things that I've done and a few things that I'll build upon if reelected. I have the sole endorsement of the King County Building Trades Union because in 2020, we saved thousands of workers from losing their jobs by making the decision to continue with port construction projects when other agencies shut theirs down. But building on this, I've set a goal to create 5,000 new green jobs through port investments in carbon reduction, energy efficiency, and habitat restoration. We can just restore the Duwamish, Seattle's only river, by cleaning up our stormwater and reducing air emissions by moving towards zero emission trucks on port terminals and sustainable aviation fuels at the airport. I have the endorsement of the Northwest Women's Political Caucus and API leader, Governor Gary Locke, for my commitment to helping women and people of color as I led the effort to triple the number of firms, women and minority businesses that contract with the port. Moving forward, I'll continue my focus on helping those furthest from opportunity, making these investments in South King County, and providing more than 600 jobs for youth from our underserved communities. You probably don't think about the port when you think about homelessness. However, 2 years ago, I worked with community leaders like Sharon Lee and led the effort to create the very first tiny house village on port property at Inner Bay, helping those living unsheltered on our streets find a stable, safe place to go. Moving forward, I'm already working on expanding this site to house more residents. I'm thrilled to be endorsed by dozens of community leaders and electeds throughout the county, like Dow Constantine, Estella Ortega, and former Representative Eric Pettigrew. But I'd be especially proud to have your endorsement because I lived in the 43rd for about 15 years and it has a special place in my heart. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you and welcome back to the 43rd, even if just virtually for tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. All right, up next is Port Commissioner Peter Sandrick.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much on short notice. I've been somewhat challenged trying to get my opportunity to have an introduction. I am Peter Steinbrook. I'm Port Commissioner running for re-election. I've only been there for 3.5 years and done a tremendous amount of work, including leading the port through the most difficult, challenging economic, and human crisis in a century last year as port president. I want to speak to a couple of things. And with regard to the decision today, the court decision, I feel personally a sense of enormous relief, but not celebration. There is more reckoning to be done, and this is the start of a new page and a new chapter in our country. And I think it's a positive new direction. I want to talk about Earth Day because I have big plans, not just for the Day of Earth, for the entire, every day should be Earth Day. And I have a new agenda for green port, green jobs, and climate protection that I am announcing this week that will work to establish a port tree stewardship plan and planting 100,000 trees by 2030, particularly in underserved tree desert communities in South King County. We've already begun the work with 3 cities, Burien, Des Moines, and SeaTac. I want to conduct an energy audit of all port facilities and evaluate potential conversion of every HVAC system to clean renewable fuels within 5 years. I want to double Sound Transit ridership to and from SeaTac Airport, which is right now only 6% of all trips. I want to convert the port vehicle fleet to electric and hybrid vehicles within 5 years. And finally, convene an energy sustainability-led climate protection and environmental leadership summit in early spring of 2020 to tap the great ideas from the community to formulate environmentally green jobs and justice for the port agenda. I'd like to talk about my policing task force, but I don't have time tonight, and we'll save that for another opportunity. Thank you, 43rd. I'm an active member. Look forward to having more conversations.
Yeah, thanks so much, Commissioner Steinbrook. We will be inviting candidates back to discuss things more in depth with us in the future. So realize that
great.
This is not much time.
Look forward to it. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Scott.
Yeah, thanks so much. All right, up next, we're going to get started with our candidates for Seattle Mayor. So the first one up is Andrew Grant Houston.
What's I found? 1 second, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
There's my hand. Oh.
Yep. We have you unmuted. Let me get, yep, you're spotlighted. Great.
First off, since it was addressed multiple times, I want to acknowledge the Chovin trial verdict that came out today. As well as the 15-year-old Micaiah Bryant, who was killed after calling the police about an hour and a half after that, which is just now going across Twitter right now. So in terms of my advocacy as a Black resident of Seattle and as a candidate looking for your endorsement, please know that I am committed to truly building our community to help take care of each other. And when it comes to my priorities in office, I am someone who does not simply want to speak words or make empty promises. I am here to execute the will of many of our residents, as well as many of us as active members of the 43rd LD, of which I am one. The thing that I really want to focus on when I think of the 43rd is connections between our two parts, which are Wallingford and of course, Capitol Hill and everything to the east of that, really focusing on allowing for more housing across the city so that we can have more neighbors and to build even more community than we have, to reverse the decades of gentrification and exclusionary zoning that has prevented so many people who look like me from being able to afford to live in the city. And I want to couple that with improvements to our buses and our light rail to push those investments forward and have a strong recovery post-COVID. So with that, I say thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. I also want to say, I maybe forgot to mention this earlier, but if candidates have email contacts or websites that they want us to direct folks to and share in the chat, we can do that. So great. So up next is Justin Farrell. We will get you unmuted and spotlighted. Hello, thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. 43rd District, it's really great to be here. I was born at the old Group Health on Capitol Hill, and of course went to University of Washington, where I was the section leader of the marching band, the sax section. So it is great to be in the 43rd. Feel a lot of kinship and sense of home. I am running for office, running to be your next mayor, because this is such a hard time for so many people, whether you are facing economic hardship, fearing that you might be evicted because of the COVID economy, concerned about racial injustice. And, for all of the white allies in this meeting tonight, I really want us to be very clear that this is not a moment for complacency in light of the verdict. And that as the next mayor, I will dedicate myself with urgency to the issue of creating a public safety system in the city of Seattle, where every single one of us, particularly our Black and brown neighbors, feel safe as they go about their day-to-day business. But this is a really hard time, and we have had a real lack of failure of leadership for the last several years. The time is now to stop patting our backs, patting ourselves on the back for complacency. And instead, we need to be solving for the great issues that face us. Are we going to be a city that you want to live in and can afford to live in? That is why I'm building on my track record as Executive Director of Transportation Choices Coalition, where I helped pass ST2, as a legislator, where I helped write the legislation for ST3, passed paid family leave, to really advocate for big, bold ideas on housing affordability. My ST3 for housing plan, you will be able to check out when we release our climate plan on Thursday. And Fresh Start for Families childcare, which is about free universal access from 0 to 5, so that families are able to work and kids are able to have the early learning opportunities they need. I would love to earn your support and work in partnership with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And yes, shared more info about Justin's campaign in the chat for folks. All right, and then up next is Colleen Echohawk.
Thank you so much. Tremendously honored to be with you all today. Hello to the 43rd. I'm coming into this with a lot of, it's heavy. I am certainly happy at the legal system worked today, but this is not justice. This is not justice when we have to fight so hard for our Black and brown family members, our relatives, every day on the streets. And I've experienced that here in Seattle. So, my heart is hurting and breaking right now for George Floyd's family, for other families that have been impacted by the brutality of the police departments around the country. So I just wanted to lift that up and to say I am running for mayor of Seattle because I believe that we need transformational change in this city. We need transformational and generational change that does not allow for these things to go on in our community. We have people in our community that are hurting right now who are homeless. I've been serving the homeless community for the past 7 years. I've been saying to our larger community that these are human beings who deserve dignity. They do not deserve to be in a humanitarian crisis on our streets. And that's what we have right now. If you look out on our streets, along our freeways, we see a humanitarian crisis, human beings suffering. And the rest of us are suffering too. It hurts all of us. So we have to do better. I am delighted to be running. I want to support each and every one of you out there in the 43rd. Every person that lives in the city deserves leadership. I asked my elders before I ran for office, and one of my elders said to me, Colleen, there is no word in the Athabascan language for leader. In our language, the word for leader is servant, because this leader is a person that serves everyone in the tribe. I am running for mayor to be that leader. Thank you so much for having me today. I look forward to more opportunities to know all of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Colleen. Yes, and in reference to that, normally we have candidates come to our meetings and you all get a chance to introduce yourself to them and meet them in person. We will do that when it's safe. So we're looking forward to that chance.
I can't wait. Thank you so much. I just look forward to meeting you all.
Yeah, thanks so much. All right, so up next is current City Council President, Lorena Gonzalez. With a cute guest there.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So good to be with you this evening. My name is Lorena Gonzalez, and so many, like so many others have already acknowledged, today's verdict in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin is welcome news, but obviously not the panacea of justice for Black Americans in our own community and across the country. And so I'm sending much love and solidarity to all of those whose hearts continue to be heavy. The fight continues, the struggle for justice continues. This is just the beginning. The ongoing fight for police accountability and transformation of our public safety system as a lifelong civil rights attorney is one of the many reasons I am running to be your next mayor. I'm proud to be endorsed by many community members and progressive Democrats, including Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, Representative Nicole Macri of this district, and frontline workers from UFCW and hotel workers from Unite Here. I'm a proud first-generation American, the daughter of immigrants, a first-time mom, and a woman of color. And in 2015, after a 10-year-long career as a civil rights attorney, I was elected to be the first Latinx person ever elected citywide. I'm running for mayor because I'm ready to lead on solving homelessness, transforming our public safety model, and building a city of connected, livable, safe neighborhoods that all have affordable childcare, public schools, vibrant parks, playgrounds, transit, and a city that prides itself in providing safe, affordable housing for all of our people. This is the kind of city that I believe we can build if we elect leaders who actively seek out all voices, who are going to organize to bring people into the process, leaders who will encourage bold, innovative thinking. I believe I'm that leader. I have the track record and the relationships with the city council, labor, and many others to bring us together to build the vibrant city that we all love. And I'm ready to build on my record of establishing progressive labor standards, passing progressive revenue, investing in our BIPOC communities, and transforming our public safety model. I hope I will earn your support. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. All right, up next is former council member and former mayor as well, Bruce Harrell.
Thank you. Thank you, 43rd. I began my my membership in 43rd in the 1970s. That sort of dates me. So my name is Bruce Harrell, and I'm running for mayor because, as others have said, right now in an unprecedented time, we need, I think, strong, value-based, and clear leadership. I think more now than ever, particularly as we saw what happened today. Now, my record is clear and proven and demonstrates my commitment to people who need a voice. I was the one who sponsored the city's Ban the Box ordinance, which prevents convicted felons from being asked during the interview process about their criminal past, give them a fair opportunity to work. I was a key negotiator in Seattle's minimum wage ordinance, which garnered national attention. That was some tough policy work that we got through. I passed the city's race and social justice legislation and the bias-free policing law to make sure we know who's being stopped for a failed taillight. I began the Seattle Promise program, which allows our kids in Seattle public schools the opportunity to go to college for free, realizing that education is critical. And in 2010, I was the first elected to propose body cameras on police officers. When I talk about culture change in the police department, you're going to see that under my leadership. Now, if elected mayor, I will introduce healthcare for all, which is a basic coverage model that will allow medical coverage to those falling through the cracks from the Affordable Care Act and the county coverage, even for the homeless population. I will create a Seattle Job Center, which makes sure the city is the hub of all jobs, and we can align people for the right resources, whether they are good with their hands or their software types, whatever their gifts are, we will align them with the right opportunity. I will introduce the Race and Data Initiative to really dismantle historical and institutional racism. So 43rd, I'm a good partner to you. You've been there for me, and I look forward to working with you if I'm so fortunate to have your support as mayor. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate that, Bruce. Thanks. Okay, up next we have Brianna Thomas, who's running for Seattle City Council position 9. Is Brianna here? All right, I'm not seeing Brianna here right now. Many candidates are moving back and forth. I know the 11th LD and other districts have meetings at the same time. So if Brianna is able to join us later, we'll give her 2 minutes there. All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks to all the candidates for joining us. Really excited to have such a strong field running for different positions, and I'm looking forward to getting down to business with endorsement season and election season coming up. Up next, we have our PCO appointments. PCOs, for those that don't know, are our precinct committee officers who knock on doors, introduce themselves to their neighbors, help their neighbors vote, share out our endorsements, and really are the lifeblood of our district. So want to have the folks that we are appointing to precincts tonight introduce themselves briefly. So up first, we have Thomas Bauer. Thomas, if you could just share your pronouns, what neighborhood you're in, and why you're signing up to be a PCO, that'd be fantastic. And Morgan, if we could spotlight you and spotlight the folks that are speaking, that'd be great.
Thanks, Scott. Again, my name is Tommy Bauer. I recently moved to Fremont, Washington from Capitol Hill. I was a PCO in the 36th when I lived in Queen Anne, looking to get back involved and help to elect Democrats across the state. My pronouns are he, him.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Tommy. All right, up next is Tatiana Zolowski. Tatiana, go ahead and introduce yourself. I think.
Hi, can you hear me and can you see me?
We can, yes. Hello.
Okay. Hi, yeah, so my name is Tatiana Quintana and I am a co-director with Decriminalize Nature Seattle. I believe it's me and Cody tonight, is that right?
Oh, sorry, we have a misjudge. Tatiana, you will be up next for the resolution. We are looking for Tatiana Zolowski. So it's great to have you though.
Rare that there's someone else with my name.
Yes, yeah, you're on deck. So, all right, to the other Tatiana. All right, I'm not seeing Tatiana here. It's possible she stepped away. I do see.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, hello, great.
Okay, hi. Yeah, I have worked as a PCO for 2 terms and I would like to continue. And I do my best to fulfill progressive agenda of 43rd and convince many neighbors to vote in the right way.
Yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming forward to be a PCO. All right, up next is Vincent Ferrato. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
Hello, are you able to see me?
We are, yes, hello.
Hi, my name is Vincent Ferrato, and I have never held a position like this before, but my wife and I last year were co-hosts for a swing group here in Winford. We were able to keep write 30,000 letters in support of Democratic candidates, both in national and Texas and Georgia. So I wanted to continue that work, and so therefore I put my name forward. My precinct was covered, but I've been suggested by Cody to work in a separate nearby precinct to get out the vote.
Yeah, thanks so much for your work in the past and becoming a PCO. So really appreciate it. And it's great. Really appreciate the folks who step up to cover our empty precincts when theirs is full. So thanks so much. And it's great to have you aboard.
Thank you. Great to be here.
All right. I don't see Rob Dolan here. He's the other precinct coordinator taking a precinct that isn't his own. Many of you know Rob. He is the secretary for the Washington State Democrats, has been a great volunteer here in the 43rd at King County at the state party. So, so those are our 4 PCOs for today. Are there any objections to appointing all of these folks as precinct committee officers? Any objections? Raise your hand if you have an objection, by the way, and we'll unmute you all. And any objections? All right. Not expecting any and not seeing any. We have approved the appointments of all these great folks, and we'll get those sent to King County and approved. And Cody will follow up with you all once that gets done. So thank you again for stepping up. Really appreciate it. If we could share the link out to how other folks can sign up to become PCOs, that would be fantastic. So it's a pretty streamlined process at this point. Yeah, I really appreciate it. So with that, I want to ask, or we're moving to our Decriminalize Nature Seattle. So I will invite Tatiana and Cody to unmute themselves. And if you both could raise your hand, that would be great. We can get you unmuted and spotlighted again.
Okay, this time for real.
For real, yeah, exactly. All right, and then I see Cody there.
Hi, Scott. Before we get started, I sent a PowerPoint over to you. Did you get it?
I did not get the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Is it good if I share my screen then?
Yep, we can do that.
Okay. And then when do I send the contact info, at the end or now?
Let's do that afterwards.
Okay. Oh,
sorry.
I need to have, I can't share my screen yet.
Yes, I'm trying to. Morgan, are you able to help with that?
Yeah, give me 1 second. Okay.
Great.
Okay, Tatiana, are you able to share now?
Let me give it a go. Yes. All
Perfect.
Right. Okay, let's see. Oh, gotta move this out of the way. Present from the beginning. All right, cool. So yes, my name is Tatiana Quintana. I live in the 37th district of South Seattle, Rainier Beach. And I'm a co-director with Decriminalize Nature Seattle. And basically, our mission statement is that we advocate for the decriminalization of natural psychedelics. And we want to ensure equitable and safe access to them to benefit human health and wellness. And so our resolution this year is basically to make possession the lowest law enforcement priority for the city, and for prosecution to be defunded by the city of Seattle. And then also what we're asking the city to do is to enact an ordinance to provide safeguards to our citizens for engaging with natural psychedelics. So let's see next. There we go. Some examples of natural psychedelics for folks who may not be familiar. You have ayahuasca, it's indigenous to the Amazon. It's basically a hallucinogenic brew or tea. You have iboga, which is native to parts of West and Central Africa. And it's been used ceremonially for thousands of years, such as the Bwiti tribe in Gabon. And then you have psilocybin mushrooms. These guys are found all over the world. There's actually quite a few species that are native to the Pacific Northwest that have psilocybin in them. That's the active ingredient. Oops, go back one. So basically for folks who are a little more interested in the science behind it, basically the active ingredient in ayahuasca is DMT. In iboga, it would be ibogaine. And then in the psilocybin mushrooms, it's psilocybin. And these all have been used differently in their different contexts. Basically, humans have a relationship to the land. So the plants that grow in the environment where people exist. People develop relationships with them. And so, for example, ayahuasca and ibogaine have been used for thousands of years, as well as psilocybin. It's just more recently that us in like the United States have become knowledgeable about them, really in the last 60 years. And if anyone wants a copy of this presentation, we will be happy to send it out because it's got a lot more detail in it, but I know we have a little bit of time today. So I just wanted to share a few brief stories from the community. So for myself, I've partnered with psilocybin mushrooms primarily for myself to release some unprocessed childhood trauma that I've had, and also to reconnect with my spirituality. Our former board member, she's moving to Mazama, but Chef Maria Hines has used psilocybin to help her manage anxiety and depression, particularly last year as she lost her restaurant, The Till, due to the pandemic. There's a link here to the Seattle Times article where she talks about that. Oh, sorry. Monique Bridges is a supporter and member of Decriminalize Nature Seattle, and she's used ayahuasca primarily to help her heal the residual effects of trauma as a survivor of domestic violence. And also it's really helped her in the ceremonial context to build up her relationships with her son. And then Todd Youngs, he's a supporter involved with Decriminalize Nature Seattle, and he overcame over 20 years of addictions to different substances such as heroin, cocaine, and alcohol, primarily working with ayahuasca and a few other natural substances. And so just in Washington alone in 2018, there were 776 Washingtonians who died from opioid overdoses, just that alone, which is more than car accidents. 6 out of 10 overdose deaths involve an opioid, and nationally, 1 in 4 people who have an opioid prescription are dealing with some kind of chronic pain and they struggle with addiction. Deaths, though, attributed to natural psychedelics are extremely rare. They're really well tolerated by the body, and millions of people over the past 60 years, and of course, including, like us knowing about it in Western society, people have used natural psychedelics really safely for a long, long time. Yeah. And something I just wanted to point out is that for most natural plant-based psychedelics, there's no physical dependence that can be formed because tolerance comes really quickly. So addiction to those substances is not heard of. It hasn't been seen. I'm going to pass it over to Cody now.
Okay, yeah, great. So anyway, my name is Cody Zolowski. I'm a proud member and resident of the 43rd, who is happy to introduce us. And I currently work as a medical researcher at the University of Washington. All my opinions here are exclusively my own and are not representative of my employer. And as Tatiana was saying, we find incredible potential with many of these entheogenic substances in treating addiction in particular. For example, AA, their success rate is only around 11% when it comes to treating alcoholism. What we find with many of these other entheogenic substances is closer to 50%. Now, for example, folks in Mexico, there are ibogaine clinics in Mexico, but that's an opportunity cost for folks to fly all the way down there and undergo ibogaine treatment, for example, for opioid addiction. And what we want to do is we want that option for people here in Seattle. So, of course, incarceration is expensive, and we're always happy to, help ameliorate the effects of the drug war. We've done LEAD and harm reduction here in Seattle, and I think it's gone very well. And so I've mentioned before about addiction, but there are what used to be called the Axis 1 disorders in psychology, and particularly Axis 1 disorders where there's an element of rumination, like major depressive disorder or generalized anxiety disorder, PTSD, OCD. So what psychedelics do is we find they have incredible efficacy in treating these substances, in these disorders as well. And they allow the brain to become more flexible and break out of many of these ruminative negative thought patterns.
Hey, Cody, I'm going to switch slides, okay?
Okay. Okay, and so, okay. Anyway, moving on. So currently, we are not the only ones who are doing this right now. There are cities and there are municipalities and there are even whole states across the country who are currently undertaking entheogenic, who are finding the benefits of entheogens and are allowing their use to be more widespread. So as of the past year, I'm sure many of you are aware of Oregon's I-109 initiative, which currently will now allow Oregon to use psilocybin, therapists to use psilocybin in the mental health treatment. So we're seeing great strides in that. And of course, once again, we are not the only municipality who's undertaking this. There's currently over, I believe, 100 organizations who are trying to decriminalize entheogenic medicine right now. And next slide. Okay, so with many of the current research, as I think, we stated before, we found that, it seems like the treatment of addiction using entheogenic plant medicine is around 50%, or maybe a little below that, but it's far more efficacious than many of the other modalities that we currently have. We also, and I believe currently some other neat information, like currently psilocybin is on the FDA fast track for the treatment of major depressive disorder. So this is currently getting attention from government regulators too. But we want Seattle to be proactive in pushing for this, because a lot of folks in the government aren't really willing to go out on a limb and take that step unless they see widespread public support for taking these actions in support of decriminalization. Currently, I'm sure many of you are also familiar with 5476, which is the bill that's currently in the state Senate. It's currently not exactly what we would want, and supporting this resolution is one way you can send a message to the folks in Olympia and say, we are ready for more progressive drug reform. We are ready for change. We are ready to utilize many of these plant medicines and entheogens in mental health treatment, because they do have use. Much like cannabis before, these plant medicines do have medical uses, and we need to decriminalize them. Next slide. And we do have, endorsements, ACLU, many of our local psychedelic folks, and also community leaders and community activists. So with that, I believe it concludes our presentation. If folks have any questions about this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, if folks have questions about this or the ask to the Seattle City Council and to Seattle that's being made here, please raise your hand and we can get those answered. Right, I see Roy.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Awesome. Yeah, pretty simple question for you. I'm curious, what is the distinction that's being drawn on natural psychedelics? Like specifically, why are you highlighting these three and not also discussing LSD in decriminalization?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question, right? So in my personal opinion, LSD and MDMA, many of these substances act on the same receptors as entheogenic natural plant medicine. Generally, what I've found in speaking to people is there are many people who are wary of more synthesized substances as opposed to plant medicine, which, psilocybin, it grows naturally here in the Pacific Northwest. It might even just be in your backyard. So, folks are more comfortable with that. But we do see, yes, we do see many of the same mechanisms of treatment from both synthesized and natural plant medicine.
Yeah, another thing I would like to add about that is a lot of the natural psychedelics actually people can cultivate at home, so it will be the most affordable and accessible for folks as well. So that's a big piece of why we care about this is you can grow your own medicine.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Roy. I appreciate it. Will.
Yes. So I'm not familiar with the classification of entheogens. Does this include any mushroom or similar substances that could potentially be harmful, or do we need to address that in wording? I'm thinking there are like death cap mushrooms. So it's like when you're talking about fungi, that's an incredibly broad group.
Yeah, so no, that's an incredibly good point. We're only talking about psilocybin, iboga, and ayahuasca. And with ayahuasca, there's some ambiguity because it's made with 2 brews, and you can extract both. You can make those brews several different ways. But no, that's just limited to these 3 substances, and I will say that health risks are generally remote, especially with psilocybin. I would say within the schedule. So these are all Schedule 1 currently, but I would say with psilocybin is probably one of the safest substances in the Schedule 1 list. I would say it's safer than a lot of Schedule 2 or Schedule 3 drugs. With ibogaine and ayahuasca, largely the risk comes from potential complications when you're taking other meds, or if some of these individuals have cardiac disorders. But aside from that, they are very safe.
Okay.
And also, for example, also like with cannabis, individuals with potential for psychosis or schizophrenia probably should not be using these either. I don't believe there have been any studies, but many of these psychoactive substances can potentiate psychosis. But aside from that, they are very safe, I would say.
Scott, we can't hear you.
Yes,
oh,
thank you. Yes, briefly muted myself. Our next question is from Peter Sandrick, who messaged me. And if you are having trouble,
there we go. Okay,
yeah,
there we go. I didn't know who the master of controller was here. Thanks. Really interesting presentation. And I'm 100% in favor of decriminalizing the use of things that nature gives us. These are gifts from nature. How can you make that criminal? I don't understand it. I'd be interested in knowing the history of the criminalization of nature's gifts and bounty.
We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say. Yay!
Yeah, that's definitely a story. So the reason the Controlled Substances Act was introduced back in the 1970s, it was part of the Nixon administration. The Vietnam War was currently going on, and they wanted a means to try to criminalize their opponents, so to speak, which tended to be hippies and African Americans. And so they came up with a lot of these really arbitrary classifications for substances and decided to jail people for them. So now here we are, almost 50 years later, and we're still rectifying that. And this is one small step in many small steps that we need to take.
Is there a reason why poppies aren't included in your list?
Yeah, so, that's a really good point. There's a doctor who's affiliated with our organization named Dr. Sunil Agarwal at the Ames Institute. And he's a psychiatrist who also, he has a list of plant-based entheogens, which do include poppies. It's currently with the opioid crisis, I would be really wary of wanting to include, opium on that list. I think that would make folks, that would deter a lot of folks who might otherwise support this.
It's a concentrated form also, but thank you very much.
Great. All right, we had one last question from Elena that came in, which was, how do we convince doctors to treat people with natural medicines like the ones you're advocating for?
Yeah.
Education. Doctors attend conferences every year, and they're constantly getting themselves informed with the latest and the greatest. And the Plant Medicine Coalition out of DC is really leading in the national effort to get folks up to speed with not only the cultural shift in what's going on, but also the scientific, basically 55 plus years of what could have been lots and lots of research that could have happened with psychedelics didn't happen because of prohibition. So it's going to be a community effort to get the word out and to get people knowledgeable about the truth, and not just the propaganda, because the propaganda worked and a lot of people are afraid of drugs, It's just saying it how it is. I was a DARE kid through and through. My family still, they're very wary of, but I mean, psychedelics have helped me so much, especially psilocybin. Really, really powerful. It just helped me process a lot of what happened to me as a child. So I know that it's not for everyone, I'm not like an evangelist or anything. There's definitely folks that it's a best use case for. And that's where best practices need to come into play. I think there's a space for people to be able to engage with these in a medical context and also in a group and ceremonial context, because both can coexist. And primarily the ceremonial context the context of doing this in relationship to your community has existed since time immemorial. So, this is why I'm here. This is what I care a lot about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I just want to add to that. Many doctors currently are very wary of, wanting to use Schedule I substances in treating their patients, even though, for example, we see almost 50% success rate in treating addiction with some of these plant medicines. What this resolution does in supporting this resolution is it is one step in many that allows doctors to feel more comfortable in utilizing it and prescribing these plant medicines. And our resolution does include language for pushing the Seattle City Council to establish a board to develop framework for regulating use.
Yeah, thank you both so much. All right, Linda, we'll go to you really quickly. We do need to get moving though, so this is gonna be the last question.
So I don't see anything in the language of the resolution that speaks to any kind of consumer safety or practitioner caution in using these. Why is that not there?
Well, so if you look at our language, this will encourage the Seattle City Council to establish a board with doctors and civic leaders and all individuals from the community to develop a regulatory framework for how this plant medicine will be implemented in a medical setting. So Oregon's I-109 has a very similar measure where they are currently gathering up experts and developing a board, to determine what is the right way to go about psilocybin medical treatment. So once again, we're not the first ones here, but we definitely want to have a provision for that, and it's in our resolution.
Great. Sorry, are you trying to say something else, Linda?
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about safety. It only says something about equitable access.
Yeah, that would just be up to the medical professionals who are on the Plant Medicine Advisory Board. Me and our organization, we are not in charge of that. This is purely in terms of decriminalization. There should not be criminal penalties for the utilization or possession of these substances. They should be the lowest law enforcement priority, and doctors and medical professionals should have protections for utilizing these over the course of treatment.
Okay, thanks. So with that, I think we will move to discussion of the resolution itself. So we're going to take all of that as a speech in favor of passing this resolution from Cody, who's a 43rd member. So want to open it up if folks want to speak in opposition to passing this resolution. Please raise your hand. Message me, message Morgan, and we will give you that opportunity. All right, I'm seeing Cody's hand, but nobody else. All right, so not seeing anybody who would like to speak in opposition. I will take that as an indication we should pass this via unanimous consent. Is there any objection to passing this via unanimous consent? Any objection? All right, I see Linda with your hand up. Linda, so you...
I want to abstain.
Okay, sure. So thanks. And that's actually a really good opportunity to say something about unanimous consent, which is it's a great, unanimous consent doesn't mean that everybody in this room necessarily agrees, but it can be used when we all understand that this is likely going to pass and that we're going forward. So thanks for that opportunity to clarify that. All right, any other objections to passing this resolution by unanimous consent? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So the 43rd has approved this resolution and signed on to the Decriminalize Nature Seattle effort. Thank you both, Tatiana and Cody, and the other folks working on this. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. And people should check the chat for more information and how to reach out and get involved if you're looking to do so. Sean, I see your hand up.
Sorry, I meant to hit the clapping icon.
Oh, great.
Apologies.
All right, no worries, thanks. All All right, round of applause for passing the resolution. Okay, great. We will move on to our committee and officer reports. So up next is Sam McVitie with our elections committee report, which is adopting our endorsement rules. Get unmute Sam, and then I think Sam's going to share his screen as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I made him a co-host.
Perfect.
So
Great timing. Great. That is a tough act to follow.
Endorsement rules are a little drier.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm sharing my screen. Can somebody just take the narrative so that we're moving this along, just so since we're behind time.
Sorry.
All right. Never mind. There we go. Okay. That screen sharing. Yes.
Great. Yep. We see it.
Okay. Excellent. So these are largely mechanical changes to the endorsement rules. So the sort of most notable change is that we are removing the requirement to renew these each year, because if we're not actually making changes, we don't need to spend lots of time at the meeting re-endorsing them when they literally have not changed year to year. So that's this first change right here under 2B. And the link is also in the agenda. So if folks want to follow along outside of the screen share, feel free to do that. So then there's minor changes here to just indicate that we're talking about candidate endorsements when we say endorsements. Moving on to Article 2. So these changes in section 2B and 2D are just generalizing the time frame so that this is not tied to a specific election cycle or year, but we just make it clear that when there is an election, then we have 30 calendar days in advance, and sort of just generalizing that scheme. And then in 3, we're sort of retroactively including that we have electronic balloting and making it clear that that is being explicitly used rather than sort of emergency rules, which I think we used last time. That also applies to Part 2D here. In 5A as well, it's just including electronic rules. And that is the entirety of the changes.
Great.
I'm hoping we can actually have unanimous consent. Because
yes.
Hopefully it's uncontroversial.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Are there any questions about any of those? Will.
Yes, so I noticed that we continue to require 60% for endorsements, whereas we continually complain about the US Senate requiring more than 50% of their votes. I believe that is hypocritical of us. I will continue to state that. However, I will vote for endorsement if it is required anyway. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Will. All right. Any other questions that folks have? Any other questions? All right. As Sam mentioned, those are pretty straightforward. So are there any objections to approving these rules? Any objections? Any objections? All right, not seeing any, we have adopted endorsement rules. To speak to Will's point really briefly, I think the 60% threshold is in our bylaws actually, and is not necessarily in these rules. So if folks are interested in changing those, I encourage you to reach out to the bylaws committee. It is bylaws@43rddemocrats.org. I think that'd be an interesting discussion to have. All right, I'm getting my agenda back up. Who is up next? All right, next up is our PCO committee. Cody Olson, our PCO chair.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So I'll give a pretty brief update here. I'm starting a PCO Slack channel for any PCOs who are interested. And so you can look for the invite for that. This is normally where I would share a link for it, but it's a little bit trickier sharing Slack invite links. So I'll just be adding every PCO's email to that, and you'll be invited to join the Slack. And what I kind of envision is that it'll just be a little bit easier to communicate as a group there. Folks are welcome to message me. And also I feel like it kind of builds a bit of energy, particularly around election season, when we can kind of just be either pumping each other up or even just, laughing about kind of an odd voter interaction that we maybe had. So if you're into Slack and you think that would be kind of useful to add some momentum to your PCO duties, feel free to join. And if you're less into Slack, then that's totally okay too. Don't feel like you're pressured or have to join this. You'll still be able to reach me over email or over phone calls. But I think for the folks who are into Slack, this could be a pretty cool thing. So keep your eye out for the invitation to the PCO Slack channel. And that is all I got.
Great, thank you so much, Cody. And yeah, please join that PCOs. It will be great to have you. All right, up next is our King County Democrats report back. Tara Gallagher is going to give us a report.
Okay, hi. I just wanted to talk about a couple of workshops. If you have ever considered running for office or have thought about being a campaign manager, or if you would like to recruit some people to run for office, there's 3 workshops coming up about running for office and being a candidate. Tomorrow night, King County Democrats will have one. It's vaguely part of the state party's run in every race program, but this is really geared specifically for Seattle, which is a much different situation. That's tomorrow night, 7 to 8. King County Democrats and King County Elections jointly will hold a workshop Tuesday night, a week from tonight, starting at 6 p.m. And then King County Elections is having a Seattle specific workshop next Thursday, the 29th. Unfortunately, that's in the morning, which may or may not work for people. The King County Democrats ones will have a lot more campaigning information, information on what to expect from managers and consultants, information about endorsements. The King County Elections will be more specific about filing, reporting, and the Thursday one will also include information about data management and voter information. So all of that information is pasted in the chat. If you have ever thought about it at all for this year or for the future, please go ahead and come to one of those. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Tara. And yeah, if you're interested in running for office, we would love to talk to you at any time. If you know somebody great, please let us know. So we're always looking for good candidates, and a great way to prepare to run for office is to get involved in your local Democratic Party. So we'd love to have your help there as well. All right, up next, we have an update from our state committee members. I think Amy Madden is giving that.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so I got my video working. Okay, hi, everybody. I have a really exciting update to give everybody tonight. Well, first of all, I should say I have a lot more information on candidate training, but watch your email for that because we're not going to have time to cover everything tonight. But please do look into the trainings that Tara mentioned as well. So my big update for you tonight is about the vote builder policy that many of us have been working to change for a while. Just a quick primer on vote builder. It is the set of data that candidates are able to access, Democrats are able to access in order to run strong and effective campaigns. And I want to highlight a few Democratic candidates from underrepresented communities who ran without access to this data last year and really highlighted the inequities in past policy and the need for change. And that is David Hackney, who ran in the 11th LD. He was able to win without access, amazingly, but not without the struggle of trying to get that access. Ingrid Anderson in the 5th LD, despite having the support of 63% of her LD, lost to Mark Millett by 58 votes. Charlotte Mena in the 29th LD, who is a rising star and leader of color in our party, lost her primary by 82 votes after being unable to achieve access to Vote Builder. And another example, the 43rd's very own Jessie Murray, a committed Democratic Party leader and strong voice from the LGBTQ and disabilities communities, who was also not able to achieve that access. So the change that has been made means that Democratic challengers at the legislative district level will have fair access now to state party resources. Access will no longer be tied to the endorsement process. So when we have these candidates of color, when we have these candidates from underrepresented communities running against usually cis white men, they're going to get the same chance that these incumbents got to make their case to the community. So I want to offer some appreciation, especially to the community leaders of color who ran for state committee in order to push for equity on this policy. And that includes David Hackney, who ran for King County State Committee member and who is also serving us in the legislature, Varisha Khan, King County State Committee member, Rebecca Muniz, who ran in the 46th, Munya Chiro in the 36th, Sean Scott in the 43rd. These folks stepped up and were a huge part of the organizing to make this happen, really led by David Hackney. I also want to thank Shasti Conrad, Nicole Gomez, Sophia Dannenberg, Scott Allspaw, Summer Simpson, and Jessica Soderman for their work in advocating. And I also want to thank Chair Tina Poplodowski, not only for being willing to meet with us and work toward improving the policy, but taking those equity questions to the national level. She's going to be bringing this in front of DNC committees that are looking at Vote Builder and data access questions. So this is a change for municipal, county, and legislative districts only, but it's huge. And we're still working on the policy for federal and statewide candidates, but this is a massive step in the right direction. And just on a personal note, I want to say this is hands down the biggest achievement that I could be part of on the state committee. And it's made all these hard work years worth it to be able to achieve this. And I'm so grateful to my colleagues for their hard work on this as well. So are there any questions? Do we have time for questions, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any quick questions about that, we can take them. I'm seeing lots of applause and less questions right now. So that's good to hear.
Thank you to all of you for supporting me and Sean Scott and getting this done too. Really appreciate your support.
Yeah, of course. Okay, not seeing any questions. We will move on in our agenda. We are running a little behind, as some of you can see, what we had planned for time. So we will get through this as quickly as we can. I am really excited. I'm going to see if I can share my screen now. I think I can. All right, I am really excited to be presenting you all. Oops, I don't think I've shared yet. All right, can you all see my screen now? I realize that people are muted, so if
yes, we can see it.
And I will say I cannot see questions or hands when I am presenting my screen. So if folks could message Morgan and or Maddie, they can help manage traffic in the chat. So as I was saying, I'm really excited to present to you all a little bit about the investigation we've been doing into whether or not the 43rd District Democrats could potentially start up a political action committee in the future. I will try and get through this quickly so that we can have some time for questions. This is a pretty dense topic, so we're not going to be able to cover everything here, but want to get the questions that the folks have so we can get them answered going forward. So I'm going to cover what a political action committee is, what the current status of the 43rd District Democrats are, both the benefits and drawbacks of having a PAC. There are advantages that we will gain. There are things we can do that having a PAC allows us, but there are also some risks involved, and want to make sure we're covering those. I'm going to briefly touch on the history of the 43rd District Democrats and our previous PAC. And then I'm going to speak a little more about the research we've been doing over the past couple of months about whether or not we can go forward with opening the PAC. So I am going to go through this whole presentation, and then we're going to take questions at the end just for time. So please note down any questions you have as you're going through this. So to start off at the top, what is the Political Action Committee, also known as a PAC? I know many of you have heard of PACs in the past and can probably name some of the famous ones locally at least. But essentially, in order to make direct or in-kind contributions to specific candidates or ballot measures, organizations have to register with the Washington Public Disclosure Committee, the PDC. Otherwise, I'm going to start using the acronym. They have to register as a Political Action Committee, also known as a PAC. So registering means that you file who your officers are, your organization, as well as your treasurer, and then from that point forward, you have to report to the PDC both your contributions and your expenditures on candidates. So you have to report not only what you're spending money on, but which candidates it is in support or against of. And just a note here, by far the majority of Democratic Party organizations, both LDs and counties, operate as PACs. They are registered with the PDC as a political committee, and they report their contributions and expenditures to the PDC. A little bit about the history of the 43rd District Democrats. Like those other orgs, we previously had a PAC. Doing so allowed us to print the sample ballots for those who have been around since 2017. You know that we would print sample ballots, give those to PCOs to distribute to their neighbors. And we filed PDC reports. In 2017, there was a complaint filed against 43rd District Democrats with the PDC, which alleged that there were errors in our reporting. The PDC and the Attorney General looked at it. They did not take any action, most likely because there were complaints filed against many LDs. We were far from alone. We were the 36th, 46th, 11th. I mean, almost every LD I could name had a complaint filed against them. So the PDC and the Attorney General didn't take any action on it, which led to a citizens lawsuit against the 43rd PAC by conservative activist Glenn Morgan, who was the one filing all of these complaints. In response to that lawsuit, the 43rd board at the time decided to close the PAC, close our bank account, and reincorporate as a 527 organization, which is actually an IRS designation, but not to file as a PAC with the PDC. And then the lawsuit that was filed against the 43rd PAC was dismissed in October of 2019. So a year and a half ago at this point. So as I kind of referenced, we're currently registered with the IRS as a 527 designated nonprofit organization. I included the IRS definition here of what 527 org is, but essentially party committees are registered as 527s. And again, just to emphasize, we are not currently registered as a political committee, and we don't make any direct or in-kind contributions to candidates or ballot measures. So these are the activities that we can partake in as a non-PAC. They should be familiar to you because they're what we've been doing. We can hold meetings. That's where you are right now. I realize I didn't fully type out that thought when I was doing my presentation. We can recruit and train our PCOs and really build the party. We can do get out the vote activities. So that's what you all have been participating in with us as PCOs. We've been talking much more to our neighbors about how to vote, where their drop boxes are, what the deadlines are. We can endorse candidates as we've been doing. We can collect dues, and we can also raise money for other PACs. The sorts of things that we can do with a PAC, if we were to reopen one, is to print literature in support of candidates, our endorsed candidates. That would almost certainly look like sample ballots or endorsement sheets. We could contribute money to candidates. The 43rd has never done that in the past, and I would personally not suggest we get into that, but it would be an option. We could run GOTV or persuasion campaign for candidates themselves, or we can do things that would otherwise constitute an in-kind contribution, such as hosting an event for a campaign, a specific candidate or campaign, or otherwise. So those are the sorts of things we could do with the PAC. A little bit about where we are in terms of reopening a PAC is some of us on the board have consulted with a lawyer who specializes in campaign finance law and works with organizations which run PACs. Some of the big questions we had for him were whether there was any risk to the 43rd in reopening or opening a new PAC. From the previous lawsuit, they confirmed that there was no risk to us, that is in the past, and that there are changes to the PDC reporting requirements. And then there was a recent Supreme Court ruling that drastically limited the ability for these sorts of citizen action lawsuits, which affected the 43rd in the past. You still have to file your reports correctly, absolutely. Like if we reopen a PAC, we will absolutely have strong incentive to do that. We believe in transparency here at the 43rd. We want to file it correctly, but the potential to be taken to court over some reporting mistakes is reduced from what it was in the past. Their kind of all-up recommendation was that we could safely move ahead with reopening a PAC, but the recommendation was that we operate the PAC as a separate entity from the 43rd District Democrats organization itself, so that we don't get in a situation where we were last time, where there were issues with the PAC reporting and it caused us to have to close down and kind of reconstitute everything that we were doing. Up next, we also have been talking with other LDs about ways that they handle their reporting. There are many LDs out there. They do it in a variety of ways. So we've talked, especially with the King County and 36 Democrats, to learn how they handle their reporting requirements with the PDC. The King County Democrats have a volunteer treasurer, and they also pay compliance person to help them assemble their reports. Essentially, the treasurer gets all of the information to the compliance professional, and then the compliance person files the reports. The 36 District Democrats, our neighbors, they rely on a volunteer treasurer who has compliance software, which tracks their contributions, expenses, and files reports. So that's, I think, how the majority of other LDs do. That's what the 43rd did in the past. We are still working out the details of which of these models might work best for the 43rd going forward. So just to discuss what the timeline and what opening a PAC might look like. So we are here at the April 20th general meeting. I'm trying to give you all an update on where we're at. We want to take questions. We're not proposing anything at this time. We do have a PAC restart committee that has been started up to work through these issues. We're meeting tomorrow at 8 p.m. If folks are interested in joining that and helping us to figure out some of those details, we'd love to have you. Please message me or email me at chair@43rddemocrats.org. Then that committee is working on putting a plan together. They'll bring it to the 43rd board in May. The hope then is that we will be able to bring that to you all at our May general meeting, so we can have a extensive discussion of that plan. It will require bylaws changes, some other things. So it's going to take a 2/3 PCO vote to make this happen. And I think that's good. We want everybody to be behind this if we're going to go forward and have broad consensus that we can do this. After that would be getting the PAC up and running, opening a bank account, registering with the PDC, starting fundraising so the PAC has money to spend. June 15th is going to be our primary endorsements meeting. So that's when we'll have all of these great candidates come back and choose who we're going to endorse. And then, then it's off the races and getting out the vote for those endorsed candidates. Last slide here is what we need from you. As I mentioned, like opening and operating a PAC is going to require buy-in from everybody here. It's a heavy undertaking. It's certainly something we can do, but we want folks to be on board with it. So want to hear your questions, your concerns, so we can make sure we have an airtight plan. Once we open a PAC, if that's the route we go down, we're going to need fundraising help. Lit is not it's not cheap to print things. So we can expect, if we really want to have an impact, we're going to need to raise around $10,000. And then we're going to need your help distributing the lit as well. So that's from our PCOs, our members. We have 120 or so PCOs right now, but we have 220 precincts, so need to get all of those covered. And I will say we're also working on what a plan might look like for getting lit out. That might look like postcards, it might look like door knocking and lit dropping. We're still figuring out those sorts of things. So with that, I see folks have their hands up, so want to get to those. And then appreciate it. I will stop sharing my screen for now, but I can go back to things if needed. All right, Morgan, do you have folks in line for questions or?
Yes, I can see people who've raised their hands, and then there are a few questions have been coming in through chat, so I forwarded those to you. Okay. But yeah, first up I had Paul. So Paul, if you could unmute.
Yes. Quick question. So we can, without a PAC, we can endorse candidates, but we can't produce a list of the candidates that we've endorsed?
Correct. And a better way to say that is we can put the list of candidates that we have endorsed on our website. We can post it on our Facebook. We cannot spend money advocating for those candidates. So it costs money to print literature. So that is why we can't do that.
Okay. So it's around the spending money. It's not around like publishing a list.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually.
That makes a little more sense.
Yep.
It's election rules. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. It's the PDC is all about transparency and election financing. So that's where it's around. All right, I see Derek has his hand
up. If you had it as a, you had the organization of 527, whatever the number is that it is right now, and then you do a separate PAC, would we run into a situation where when we do fundraisers, it's going to have to be incredibly clear that this is for like membership dues for our organization, that's the 527, can't then go into the PAC. So like if we do ballots and bubbly, we'll have to say this is ballots and bubbly for the 43rd Dem PAC committee, right?
Correct. Absolutely. That is the guidance we got from the lawyer, state finance chair. Yes, have to be very clear about that. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And actually, Derek brings up a good point. we cannot transfer any of the money currently in our bank account to a new PAC. We didn't collect donation information about that. So that is kind of a separate bucket that we'll use for they're called exempt expenses essentially. But we can't transfer that money into a new PAC. It has to be new funds. Okay, Andrea, do you still have a question? I saw you message me that it might have just been asked, so.
No.
Okay, great. Awesome, thank you. All right, Linda.
So this is a follow-up to Derek's question, but let me preface it with something. We really had a problem before with actually as volunteers keeping up with the finances and with all the complicated rules of filing, including the fact that at the end of an event, making sure you had all the records sometimes just took an exhausted person in charge too much time to do. So I really want to caution that we make sure we're in place. So part of my question is, can we partner with 2 or 3 adjacent LDs to hire a professional and make sure that we don't fall into that kind of problem that we did before? And my other question follows up on Derek's. What's the relationship and control that the 43rd District Board has over a separate PAC if they must be separate entities?
Yeah. So I will take your second question first. So that is something we are still working through the details of. What you will likely see is something in either our bylaws or standing rules that lay out how the PAC will be run, that it will only support candidates endorsed by the 43rd District Democrats, that it will support all candidates equally likely. And so we're still working through the details of that exactly. So does that answer that part of your question, or?
Partly. It isn't just about their following our endorsements. It's also about other things they may choose to do, the way they choose to raise funds. In other words, when you have an organization with your same name in the current political environment, we better be really careful about what the relationship is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is absolutely our intent that that a PAC that we run is operated for the benefit of our members and PCOs and our endorsements. So that is a very valid concern and something we want to make sure is addressed. So we're working on putting that together. Please let us know if you don't think what we come up with meets that threshold, and would appreciate your input on how to do that in a strong way. Annabelle, did you want to say something about that? I got a message for you. Hello, Annabelle. Okay, I am not hearing Annabelle right now. So Linda, you had another question about teaming up with other LDs. Okay, no, we'll get back to you on that. So definitely something to take into consideration. Annabelle, are you there?
Can you?
Oh, we could hear you, and then you're not muted again.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I don't know what that was about. So yeah, I just wanted to jump in as chair of the Rules and Bylaws Committee. This is something I'm very much interested in as well. And the simple answer to Linda's question really is we haven't worked out the exact details, but I think one of the tools in the tool belt here is figuring out the relationship between the two organizations' bylaws. So one possibility is you might see bylaws for the PAC that explicitly delegate control to the 43rd board. The question of how much goes in our bylaws, how much goes in the PAC's bylaws is we're working through that. But this is very much something that we're interested in and we want to make sure we get right. So. But it is also a little bit of uncharted territory for a lot of us. So, we don't have all the answers yet.
Yep, thanks, Annabelle. Appreciate that. All right, Will.
Yes. So I have two questions. One, would the PAC be able and seek out contributions from Jeff Bezos or people like that, which would probably cause most of the membership to literally explode? And two, in the event that we don't form this PAC, can we not post our endorsements in a PDF file that individual PCOs could then print and deliver themselves? Thank you. That's the two questions.
Sorry, could you? I missed the first part of your first question. Could you repeat that one?
Let's say that we had a few multi-billionaires living in or near our district, which happens to be true. Is there anything to stop the PAC from going and getting lots of funds from said people and then feeling obligated to distort their operations?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. I think one thing is our endorsements will likely stop Jeff Bezos from contributing to our PAC. It has not been an issue that has come up where we have had dirty money in some way, right? We don't have oil companies, we don't have pharmaceutical companies looking to invest in our PAC. Our organization has always been grassroots funded. Our membership dues make up a large proportion of our fundraising, so I'm not concerned about a PAC reaching out, and I am very confident that our members would let us know if we were doing something like that they disapprove of. As to your other question about putting a PDF online and allowing PCOs to print that, we do that. So that is there. That is the sort of thing that we are allowed to do and have been doing. And I will just say that that's great, and thank you to our PCOs who are being proactive and printing that out. Really appreciate that. I think there is a big difference between doing that and doing the sort of organized outreach and campaign that we could do with a PAC. So we're trying to get people to vote, and we provide resources for our PCOs to get out our endorsement if that's something they're inclined to do. But we we don't raise money for our endorsed candidates. We don't do anything of that sort. So this is kind of taking a bigger step in supporting our endorsed candidates. Great. Are there other questions that people have? I see some folks sending me suggestions in the chat. Thank you for that. All right, any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions right now. Thank you all so much. Please reach out to me at chair@43rddemocrats.org if you have any questions, any concerns, if you want to be involved in helping to figure this out. We can use more hands, more experience. If you've worked with a PAC in the past, that would be fantastic. So Linda is mentioning to me that the 43rd has in the past given money directly to ballot measures, but not to candidates. So that's a good history lesson. Thank you, Linda. That was probably before my time, so really appreciate that. Okay, so that is it with the PAC presentation. So before we move to our next agenda item, which is the budget, want to invite Brianna Thomas, who's running for Seattle City Council position 9, to introduce herself for 2 minutes, just like our other candidates earlier.
Thank you so much, 43rd, for having me. And thank you for the chair's indulgence. I will try to keep this under 2 minutes because I have seen the rest of your agenda. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Brianna Thomas. I currently live on the island of West Seattle, and I am a proud Democrat. I actually was honored to have your campaign of the year given to me in 2014 for my work on the CTAC $15 minimum wage. A couple of things I've done so you understand a little about where I'm coming from. We did Yes for CTAC in 2013. I was your activist of the year in 2014. I ran for Seattle City Council in 2015 out here in District 1, came in 4th, and then went to work for Council Member Gonzalez, but not before, managing the Honest Elections campaign, which brought us the voucher program, which is off to the races. It's working wonderfully. Then I did secure scheduling, worked on the police accountability ordinance, helped build the Office of Inspector General, and working on criminal justice reform outside of just the SPD, but the city attorney's office, the courts, bail reform, the whole kit and caboodle. And that's why I'm running. We saw today in the verdict of Derek Chauvin's trial that there was a moment of justice. There's a lot of work to do. There are a lot of systems that need reforms. And I believe I'm the best candidate for this position because I understand what it's like to be on the inside and navigate those systems. I'm proud to be working with labor unions and pursuing their endorsements. And we are running on the voucher program with the grassroots campaign. And with that, I will return your 36 seconds. And thank you so much for squeezing me in. Y'all have a good night.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Brianna. I really appreciate it. All right, so with that, we will move on to what is our final item for the evening, which is our budget. We are running behind schedule, and I want to just be aware of everybody's time and realize that the budget can be a deeper conversation. So I think what we're going to do is have Maddie Bonhoff, our vice chair, is going to go walk us through the budget. We can take general questions on the budget as a whole. If there are items that are going to require more discussion, my suggestion and hope is that maybe we can push those out to May and come back and discuss those and have more time. I hope that sounds good to everybody. We can discuss that afterwards after Maddie goes through the budget, what those items might be and figure that out. So Maddie, do you want to take it away for us?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Just getting, can everyone see this?
I can see this.
Perfect. Let me move the little videos. Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for your patience. And as Scott said, we want to pass what we can pass tonight, and then anything that merits further discussion be able to take up in May. So just a little bit about this overview. We're going to be talking about some of our top line budget goals. We're going to go over our current funds at hand, our fundraising goals for the next year, any updates that we've made to past existing budget categories, any new budget categories that we are proposing, and then just an overall summary of what our funds and budget look like for 2021 to March 2022. So some of our goals with this budget are first to grow the 43rd District Democrats by putting money into recruiting new members and providing more opportunities for current members to get involved, as well as invest in making our organization more welcoming and accessible to people from diverse backgrounds. We want to be able to support our endorsed candidates and drive voter turnout in the 43rd Legislative District, advocate for our platforms and values with candidates, elected officials in our community, and then advance democratic values and build relationships through direct aid to communities in the 43rd. So just a little bit of a numbers overview. At the start of this year, we had about 23,000 in our checking account, which has gone up to about 25,000. In our savings account, we have roughly the same at $5,600. As well as in our cash box, so 181 at the beginning of the year, and then now at 216. So essentially, our total assets started the beginning of this year at 28,000, approximately 700, and now is currently at 30,500. And I can't see questions or anything like that, so I guess we'll take them at the end because I can't see the chat.
Yep, let's do them at the end.
Perfect. And then just a little bit of an overview of our fundraising goals. So in 2020, we raised almost $10,000 in membership dues, and we hope to do the same in 2021. Last year, we did not host any fundraising events because of an unfortunate pandemic, but we are looking forward to, we would like to raise $7,000 through fundraising events for 2021, now that we have a better idea of what to expect, as well as we've translated everything online, and that was a big part of what happened in 2020. Last year, we had about $2,000 in general donations with some interest as well. So our budgeted amount for fundraising this year would be about $17,000 if you factor in our membership dues and then what we hope to make in fundraising events. So the first two slides, I'm going to be going over what were our carryover budget categories. So budget categories that we had last year, what we spent in 2020, and then what we are budgeting for 2021. So if you look at this budgeted amount, it is what we're budgeting for 2021. So the first is elections and get out the vote. So this might be candidate forums, voter outreach, text banks, voter registration drives. And so this is something that we would love to pass tonight, at least this category, because we have a lot of work to do over the next couple months. Spent about $1,500 last year, and so we'd be looking to spend about $3,000 in the upcoming year. Our next category, membership, PCO recruitment and engagement. This would be all of our recruiting for new members and PCOs, as well as PCO training, text banking, one-on-ones. Unfortunately, we only spent about $200 last year, and we'd be looking to spend about $3,000 this year. So this budget was developed in part to accommodate for both continuing to be on a virtual platform for at least the next couple months, with the hope and expectation that eventually we will have in-person events and opportunities as well. Budgeting $1,000 for committee support. So this might be meeting space, printing snacks to support our committee chairs and the members that they recruit. Advocacy, so this might be costs associated with organizing for specific policies to include rallies, lobby days, etc. As this does go into next year until about April, we want to make sure we budgeted for potential in-person opportunities over the next year. And then events and meetings, typically one of our biggest expenses, but of course not this year. So this would be our space rental, printing costs for any sort of special in-person events, such as candidate forums. Last year, only spending about $600, but we'd like to see about $3,000 this year. And then the next, same thing, there are more carryover budget categories. So operations and equipment. So this might be Zoom, Canva, Action Network, really everything that keeps us up and running. We spent about $1,000 last year, which makes a lot of sense since we had to move to electronic voting, Zoom, and WebEx as well. And so budgeting about $1,700 for this year to be able to balance hybrid meetings that we might have to be conducting over the next couple months. We have a one-off for operations and equipment. So this might be communications equipment to be able to assist for those hybrid meetings in the future at $750. Executive board operations, so our legal costs, meeting space, printing, office supplies at $750. Any fundraising costs, so this might be fundraising software, credit card fees, event costs, and consulting. We spent about $500 last year, and so we have a budget of $2,500 for this year. And then the final, I believe this is the final carryover budget category, is for travel stipends. So there is one potential in-person state committee meeting. And so this would be reimbursement of travel costs for our state committee members to be able to attend these committee meetings across the state at $750. So those are all of our carryover budget requirements. And then some new proposed budget categories. So this first page, part one, the first is we're proposing a communication budget. So this would be to experiment and explore with paid promotion of our communications, events, and membership opportunities. This cannot be spending related to advancing any candidate or ballot measure, but it might be used to advertise events such as our candidate forums, membership opportunities, events, getting folks signed up as members of the 43rd, and other ways to reach a wider audience that lives in our district. We've also budgeted $1,600 for membership engagement tools. So trying out a subscription to an online membership engagement tool such as Voterfied or others. This funding is for all the way to the end of the year, at which point we will reevaluate to see if this engagement tool is actually serving its purpose, that our members and our PCOs are engaging with it, and we find it's useful for our issues. We also have about $1,000 budgeted for an accessibility budget. So this might include closed captions, interpreters, transcription services, and many other accessibility issues that we might not even be aware of, especially as we start to transition back into in-person meetings, hopefully sometime later this year. And then also a $4,000 budget for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So to be used specifically for efforts to make our organization more welcoming and inclusive of the diverse communities. So this might be used to hire a consultant, either for the membership or the board, being able to put on trainings, workshops, et cetera, which would be, I believe, managed by a DEI committee. And then our final page is 2 items around direct aid in our community. The first is real rent. So this would be paying rent to the Duwamish tribe at around $50 a month. We know that many people here are personal donors as well. And so we would like to do so as well. So this would be a budgeted $600 a month in terms of paying rent for our space that we occupy within our legislative district. And then the next item is a $4,000 budget for mutual aid and community support. So recognizing that mutual aid is a form of political participation and recognizing that politics means, direct impacts on tangible improvements to people's lives and feel amplify these causes. And this would be determined by the construction of a mutual aid committee. And then last but not least is worth mentioning is a potential political action committee. As Scott pointed out earlier, there is none of the existing funds can be used for starting or running our political action committee, but this might have an impact on fundraising, future fundraising money that comes in. So this would be entirely new funds to be spent on compliance and in-kind support with printed endorsement sheets. So essentially part of that would be voter outreach and then additional funds as well. So it doesn't have any impact on that existing $30,000 that's currently in the bank, but would have an impact on any fundraising that comes in. And then with that, a quick summary. Currently have about $30,000 cash on hand. We have a $17,000 fundraising goal, which puts our total available funds to $45,000, give or take. We budgeted $41,000, and so we'd expect to carry over about $4,500 in the following year. And with that, that is the end of the budget presentation. I know that we want to get to discussion and to be able to discuss what we can. So, sorry, yes, and then Annabelle, hybrid meetings are not the next few months. They'll likely be permanent. Agree, there's going to be a lot of changes as a result of the last year and what we've learned. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Scott.
Yeah, thanks so much, Maddie. If you could continue sharing your screen just so we can refer back to things if people have questions, that would be helpful. Great. So if folks have questions about anything, if we could start there, that would be great. Please raise your hand or send me a message and we can get those answered. Okay, any questions about any of this? All right, I'm seeing that Maddie did such a great job of explaining things that nobody has any questions.
Or a terrible job and no one knows what I just said.
Could be, I'm confident that you did a great job. Okay, so not hearing any questions, want to open it up to if folks want to specifically discuss certain things. I actually just got a question from Will that was messaged me. Would fundraising events be allowed to have 2 places to give membership and PAC? So the in terms of fundraising, much of our new fundraising, our hope will be towards the PAC. As we discussed earlier, we're going to have to be really obvious about which entity we are collecting money for, what the purpose will be with people. So that will be and Maddie, went through the PAC budget really quickly. That's essentially just setting aside a certain amount of money. Included in that will be some for fundraising. I think that's kind of net of whatever fundraising expenses the PAC has, is that $12,000 figure. So we will be, my intention at least, and I think the other folks discussing the PAC committee, is to have a more detailed PAC budget for folks to approve as part of that plan. Great, I appreciate that question. Any other questions that folks have? Realize it can take some time for folks to type them out or raise their hands. So want to give that chance again. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So want to ask folks if there are items here that they want to delay to discuss further in May. If folks have concerns about anything, now would be the time. Paul, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, my question was, do we contribute to real rent to Amish? And would it be legal for us to do so as our organization?
So we do not currently do that. We believe that it is legal for us to do that if we want. It is in the budget that we begin doing so. So yeah, that is absolutely something that we can do going forward if we so choose.
And I believe that the 36 is doing similar types of direct aid.
Yes. Yep. And yeah, we started doing land acknowledgements this year, and this is a way to put a little more beyond just an acknowledgement, start doing a small measure there. Okay, so any other questions and or things that folks think need more discussion? All right, Tara, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I wanted to pull a mutual aid for more discussion next month.
Okay, thank you for that. We will have a vote on that, or discussion on whether to pull the mutual aid. So Tara, Tara, could you speak to why you want to do that? We'll treat this as, I guess, a motion to postpone that part of the budget to May.
So you want me to speak about my concerns, or just what I want to do with it for now?
Why you think we should postpone the discussion to May?
I, for one, have concerns, and that there's parts that need clarification. I think it's a new and detailed thing, and it's not clarified exactly what this entails, and it would be a longer discussion.
Okay, thanks for that. All right, does anyone want to speak against moving the mutual aid to May? All right, I'm not seeing anyone else. Yeah, I think we can definitely reserve time in May to have a fuller discussion of that. All right, so any objection to pulling out the mutual aid to discuss in May? We can come back with more details. I think there are folks working on this now. All right, any objections to that? All right, seeing none, we will pull the mutual aid from the budget we're approving tonight and move that to May. I would entertain a motion to do the same with the Political Action Committee budget. We can just take that up next month as a part of our decision to do that. Is anyone interested in making that motion? I see Annabella's hand is up.
So moved.
Okay, great. Is there any objection to moving the approval of the PAC budget to May? Any objection? Any objection? All right, I'm not hearing any, so we will move that to May, and we can, devote much more time in May to discussing the details of that budget and also the rules of balance we talked about earlier. Okay, anything else that folks think should be pulled from this for further discussion? Anything else? Okay, seeing none, this is Finance Committee report, so it doesn't need to be moved. Is there any objection to approving the budget without the mutual aid and PAC categories? Any objection? We can have folks speak to things if we need to, if there's objections. I'm not seeing any. All right, hearing no objection and not seeing any messages, we have approved the rest of our budget. So we'll get started on all that work. Thank you, everybody. And absolutely expect in May to have a conversation about mutual aid in the 43rd and reopening at PAC. Thanks, Maddie, for walking us through that. Really appreciate it. Thanks to Brad and Maddie for helping to put together the budget, and others, everybody on the board, helped out and had these conversations. So really appreciate that. All right, with that, we are through our agenda. Sorry that we ran over a little bit, but great to have a bunch of candidates with us to speak to us this evening. Are there any good of the order announcements that folks have to share about the stuff going on the 43rd? Anything else you want to share? It's an open floor. All right, I see Annabelle's hand up.
I was just making sure that you knew that it's not an open floor because you still have to unmute people.
Correct. Sorry. My intention is to unmute folks who raise their hand. So
as long as I'm unmuted, I will just say, go get your vaccination shot, schedule your appointment. We're all eligible. It's awesome. I got round 1 today. It was super easy. Get it done if you can.
Yeah, thanks so much, Annabelle. Appreciate that. All right, and then I see D.
Yeah. Hey guys, I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm doing the T3 Train the Trainer workshop, and I just didn't know if other people in the LD are doing that training, but I think if like the more people from whatever LD has the most amount of people completing the training, which is 12 courses, then the LD gets like a prize or an award, like $1,000 or something from the Washington State Democrats. So I just want to say that I'm doing that and plan to complete it. And it's a really great program if anyone's done it. And if anybody doesn't know about it, it basically is the best practices for either running a campaign or being a campaign manager or being a candidate running for office. And so overall, I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, if there's other people doing it, I'd love to link up with you in the LD. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I am doing it myself. And if you could send an email to chair@43rddemocrats.org, I'll put you in touch with other folks who are running it.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, it's great to find folks skilling up. It's really important. So, all right, Aiden.
Thank you. On the police funding, the funding that you mentioned earlier, there's a bunch of things on my mind, but while the verdict was coming out in Minneapolis, the Columbus Police Department killed a 15-year-old Black girl who had called the police asking for help. We have a long way to go, but Seattle has done a lot more than most so far, which is not saying much. But on the participatory budgeting process for the Black Brilliance Research Project, there's a week of action this week with a link I will share. They're putting pressure on the city to release that money that's being delayed. There's a series of ways to let the city know if you support making it happen. So here's a short link in the chat that someone else will share.
Great. Who did you send that to, Aiden?
Morgan.
Okay, great.
There are also more sweeps planned on Friday for University Playground and Gilman Park, and it's something we can't forget about, that we have got to find a better way to deal with this. So we give people time to move into what shelter there is and expand what shelter is available and housing. And there's a lot to say, but sorry, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Aiden. Really appreciate your activism on that. Will.
Yes, I'm actually getting my last Pfizer shot tomorrow. I really encourage everyone who is 16 years or older to go get your shots. I know it's a pain in the butt to go through the registration, but you can literally walk into certain Safeways, CVS's, and Fred Meyer's, including in our district, there's about 12. And you can register either for that same day or for 2 to 3 days later. So if you can't handle the electronic thing, use the phone number or go in and someone will help you there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Will. I appreciate that. Anything else from folks? Anything else? All right, I'm not seeing any other hands. I will just say we're on the board now that we have a budget approved. We're going to start looking into candidate forums. Want to, hopefully have a conversation around this Compassionate Seattle ballot measure. We're look out for events from us, so you all will see it show up in your email. Looking forward to the legislative session is ending. We're our focus is turning to election season coming up, so really appreciate you all. Thanks for sticking with it through the whole meeting. Sorry we went a little over, and we will see you in May. Have a great evening, everybody.